In this lesson, I want to demonstrate some of the mistakes that can be made in a program so you can see what they look like and how to react to them. Because you are going to be making mistakes, trust me. So let's start a new project. We're going to call this one CHAP3 Part 2 and click OK. And we'll just work strictly with the Hello World program that we did first. So the first mistake you might make is to spell something wrong. So for example, here I left off the I out of WriteLine. One of the nice things about using Visual Studio or Visual Studio Express is that the compiler or the system will show you errors as you make them. So when you make a typo like this, where I misspelled the word line, the red squiggly line indicates that the system or the compiler doesn't recognize that method name. So if I put my cursor on there, I see that it says system.console does not contain a definition for WriteLNE. So I know there's something wrong there, and then I look and say, oh yeah, that's supposed to be WriteLine. So I add the I, then click off, and the error goes away. So that's how you can handle typos. Another error you'll make is I'll leave off the semicolon at the end of a line. We're going to talk more about the rules for writing lines of code, but one of the rules is that statements end in a semicolon. You've seen examples of that with console.WriteLine and console.ReadKey, but I haven't really talked about the rule yet, and I'll get to that later. But you see that when I leave the semicolon off, it puts a red squiggly line after the closing parenthesis in ReadKey. Kind of hard to put the cursor on it and get an error to come up, but if you look down at the error list down below, you can see that it says semicolon expected on line 13, column 27. And if I move to that spot, that's line 13, column 27, as I can see down here on my status bar line. So that's an easy one to correct. I just make sure that there's a semicolon after the closing parenthesis. So I add that in, click off, and the errors go away. A third type of error you might make is to leave off a closing curly brace. Now using Visual Studio Express, it tries to match curly braces for you, but in the process of editing and deleting and rewriting, you might accidentally take one off, as I've done there. Well, once the system sees that, then it will signal an error. The problem is, because curly braces match, what's doing now is saying that a curly brace is expected. You can see that in the error list, but you don't know which one. So what you have to do is you go back and look at levels of indentation, and that's why we use them. By using levels of indentation, I can visually match up opening and closing curly braces, so that I see that this opening brace right here on line 11 does not have a matching close. The first matching close is on line 15, but I can tell visually that it goes with the open curly brace on line 9. So I find the spot where the closing curly brace should have gone, add it in, and then my error message goes away. So those are three types of errors you might make: a typo, missing a semicolon or leaving a semicolon off, and not having matching curly braces. There are many more errors that you can make, but these are three of the very common ones that you'll start making immediately as you start writing your own programs. So that wraps up this lesson on errors. You do have to understand that you're going to make them, and you will continue to make them as long as you're a programmer. Now we're ready to move to the exercise for this chapter, where we're going to work with some modifications of this Hello World program.